Hello, just an interesting one here today. Something that's been requested a few times. So, although I've been saying that I'm not manager bashing, in this case I possibly am, because these are difficult managers, and I think what's currently happening in certain services and certain jobs is certainly evidence that these people are actually at the top. In some cases, very very top positions. So it's very interesting, and just to put this information out that if you can recognize that person, fairly certainly that this is a narcissistic manager. Now, when you're talking about narcissism, it's quite interesting because people can have lots of narcissistic traits and not necessarily have a narcissistic personality disorder. So we're talking about generally people who are very high on the high spectrum of narcissism. And narcissists are generally not very pleasant people, very, very difficult people to work for or with. Also, really difficult people because of the what they're going through. They rarely, very rarely, voluntarily go to psychotherapy or counselling, because the problem's never with them. That's their idea. They're not the problem. You're the problem. If you have a problem with me, it's your problem kind of person. So they're, yeah, very, very difficult people, don't generally want to work on themselves and improve. And fundamentally, they are incredibly insecure people. Really, really incredibly insecure people. And that's not even at a conscious level that they could run around and say, I'm very insecure, because it's so deep in their being that this manifests as these really difficult personality traits, or in the case of now, management traits. So how would you know if you had a narcissistic boss? And it's really, really, really interesting. I think when you hear these, you'll go, you'll be able to name that person and know exactly who they are, in your job. If you have them, if you don't, brilliant, you have a great little job. But generally, if you have a really terrible job and you're having a really difficult time, there's normally a narcissist at the wheel. So the narcissist is someone that really wants to be admired all the time. So you'll see them. They'll jump out at you. It's the manager that's coming around, and there's a lot of sycophants, there's a lot of yes men, yes women, people like that put around them. They not that they come up, they surround themselves with these people. They will generally promote those who are actually, yeah, oh, I'll do that for you. What do you want me to do there? And I'll do this for you, no problem. Oh, and this, these kind of sycophant kind of personalities, and it's difficult even to see because you're kind of looking at these people going, what are you doing? Like, if you have no self respect, but they are out there because the person who feeds the narcissist has some other concern and some issues going on in them themselves. But the narcissist is just loving this, is just taking all this in because, yeah, of course you love me, you worship me, aren't I fantastic? Look at me, aren't I brilliant? Who wouldn't love me? So they surround themselves with these people, and that might mean, and this has certainly been my experience, that might mean that the narcissistic manager will hire or promote those yes men or yes women, to be around them all the time, to feed off them and boost them. And this is how they survive and how they think they're great and all this, because they have all these people around them. But it kind of doesn't stay like that for long. They kind of deal with these people, their subordinates, for they can tolerate the love of them for a certain amount of time, but then it becomes control and they want to start this kind of bullying and this kind of do what I said, don't disrespect me and stuff. So that's the thing. They want to be admired, they want to be loved. They base their own self-worth on how other people see them. Now other people see, and maybe someone's in that position thinking, I know how to get to the top, I'll worship this fella because that seems to be the way up, and that may be a way in, I don't know. I've often heard of people sleeping their way to the top. Generally that was probably a narcissistic manager that allowed this to happen. So they might even encourage, the person, the sycophant with them, to say something publicly. And again, I have witnessed this. I've witnessed this outside of the job. I was also involved in voluntary organisations and stuff, and one of my senior managers was also involved in a voluntary organisation. It was really interesting for me to observe that a manager that was up for promotion, at the time he wasn't a manager, a lad that was up for promotion, basically followed the senior manager around like a lapdog in the voluntary organisation. And it was quite pathetic, really. It was just felt kind of sorry for him. And when the opportunity presented, the fellow that was up for promotion came up in front of a big room full of people to praise this senior manager, who wasn't actually senior manager, was just another volunteer in this organisation, but had to make an open display about how wonderful this person is and how great and how lucky we are to have them. That fed the narcissistic manager, and that lad got his promotion. So it's quite difficult when you're in that situation and you have that, that kind of self-awareness, and you're not sucked into their nonsense and you're observing, you'll get that discomfort feeling. So that's how you'll know as well. Interestingly, they don't show any empathy. So you have an issue. So at work, you have an issue. So you'd go for something. It's a family emergency, for example. Something happens in your family and you say, I need to take time off urgently. They can tend to shame you and publicly say, I thought you were fit to do this job, and obviously you're not. There's no sympathy, no empathy here. There's no, and again, I've witnessed this, I've seen this, and it's not exclusive to me. And that's what they tend to do. I thought you were able to do this job. You're not turning up for your work. And they do this because it makes them feel great. It gives them a power over you. And as well as how dare you let me down, because it's all about them. It's not about you. It's not about your problems. So they've no sympathy, no empathy for your position and what you're going through. And that's, these are the flags. You kind of go, okay, I noticed this. So they'll still demand, like as I said in earlier videos, that I received emails while I was off with mental health concerns, and I received emails demanding, not just requesting, demanding I come back to work. And this is over years. So one incident I demanding for managers to come back to work, another incident I demanding to come to meetings while I'm off sick. And so when you see these things, you kind of know, well, these are very narcissistic people, very narcissistic managers. So, it's quite difficult to be around. They use anger and aggression. That's one of the big tools as a manager. They don't want you showing them up. They don't want you to show how rubbish they are at the job, because they're not good managers. They got promoted because they were the ones that they'll show that they can do the job. They'll do anything they're asked to do. They're quite nice in the beginning. They're quite and I've been sucked in. They're good. So it's not just you. I've been sucked in with these people that are real. They've this lovely charisma about them, and while they're trying to groom themselves and get themselves up, they'll bring you in and, they may not say you're great, but they'll allow you to tell them they're great. But there'll be some kind of charisma coming back to you from them, and you'll kind of think to yourself, oh, they're nice, they like me and this kind of stuff. So it's your stuff as well going on. So they'll use all this, and there may be a kind of a love bombing phase where the manager will come in and say, oh, you did, yeah, I like what you did there. That's really interesting, actually, yeah. But what's actually happening is that they're making a plan to steal your idea, and you'll find. So I've been in a situation where I went out to quite a sick person. I was called. This manager was in there, and this manager was just a puddle of nerves, just shaking, nearly crying, couldn't do anything. And I went in and did my job, thanked the manager. Useless, but anyway, thanked the manager, brought the patient out, and I heard later on that only he'd arrived first, that patient would have died, and if it wasn't for him, this kind of stuff. So this is what they do. They'll steal your work, they'll put it off to themselves, and they'll tell everybody how great they are, and if it wasn't for me, that was there. And then they'll have everyone in the family when you've left, or say if it's in a hospital environment, they'll have everyone around told, well, they can only do that when I'm around, and if it wasn't for me now, that person would have got really sick. So it's that kind of nonsense that they come out with, but that's all to stroke their own ego, make themselves sound fantastic. So they use anger all the time to keep you down. They might shout at you, they might bang their fist, they might grind their teeth, to raise their voice, be quite aggressive. You put in a complaint about them, which you do. What'll they do? You're no good at work anyway, you don't do it. And she's imagining things, or he's imagining things, it's all in his head. So they'll gaslight you. That is their favourite tool of the narcissistic manager. They will make you feel that you're mad, that you've made it up in your head, you've imagined all these issues, and there's nothing wrong with that manager. That's the thing they want to get across. They're a manager, that's their job. They have an incredible superiority complex. They have incredible superior ideas about themselves. I am better than you, so I'm entitled to more. And that can come across with what I mentioned in earlier videos around policies. If there's a policy there that you've noticed that's not been held, you go to them and you'd say, listen, we have to do this. And they go, I don't go by that policy. I'm above that policy. Do you know who I am? That's the manager. And you've witnessed them. So I realise I'm coming to the end of this. So if a little bit more, and if you want to know how to handle that narcissistic manager, check in again. I'll have a part 2. Thank you.